Well, I had this moment with the bus driver. It's not quite a leader, but kind of.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm not sure how many have heard what sort of went on there, but for me, obviously that's not ever a good thing when somebody has something, a health thing go on, and I'll explain that in a second, but it was just to see God's hand in that whole process. So Arlene and I I picked up Arlene and we were driving her over to the community hall, and as we were driving by the Esso between Flin Flon and Creighton there, we saw one of our buses pulled over and the bus driver talking with a couple of the leaders, and I said to Arlene, they kind of look like they're lost, the way that they're talking. Maybe we should pull over, or maybe you said that to me, but anyways, we sort of agreed that we ought to pull over and check it out. So Claire happened to call at the time, so I talked to her for a minute and then hung up, and I looked back, the leaders were gone and the bus driver had just entered the store, so I followed him in, and he had picked up a pop and was standing at the counter to pay for it, and so I stood beside him. I thought, I'll let him pay, and then I'll talk with him and make sure that he knows where he's going. And I turned and looked outside, and I looked back, and there he was lying flat out on the floor. And so we started to, try to take care of him and see what was going on and all this kind of stuff. And so we called an ambulance, and they came and got him and took him into the hospital. And I thought to myself after, he had just dropped kids off 5 minutes ago. And, what if that had happened while he was driving the bus? And, you see God's hand in those little things. And then I thought, well, what if we had just driven by and said, they'll be okay, and just kind of, to just sort of feel that little nudge to say, no, we ought to maybe just stop and check. I mean, I didn't stop and check on any other bus driver through the week, why that one at that time? But then, there I was able to go right away. Claire, we need to deal with the bus that's left running here, and we have to get this person to the hospital, and we know who he is, and let's contact his company. And we could do all of those details just because of this seemingly coincidental kind of moment where we came in. And then I was driving, and I happened to be driving on Main Street, going to do another errand, and as I turned, I was going to meet Claire, I think, I looked, and it looks like the bus driver. This is a couple days later now, standing there, and he's looking sort of lost again. So I pulled a U-turn and pulled over, and I, called out his name, and he sort of, I don't think he remembered me from the incident because he didn't remember really anything, but so I introduced myself, and I said, what's happening? So I just got released from the hospital 15 minutes ago, and I was like, do you have taxi companies this place? I'm trying to find my way home, like I'm trying to get to the airport and get home and get in contact with my company. I said, I'm your taxi driver, come on, hop in, let's go. And so we took him, we had a cup of coffee, got him to the airport, found out that they don't know why he collapsed, but he had really banged his head and that had caused some damage, and so they were keeping tabs on him that way, and then it seemed to be okay, and so off he went. So, it was one of those things where, it's a bad experience, but you just see how, like, wow, God just puts people in places, and you think, that's incredible, and you could just say that's a coincidence, but you start to see those things like that go on in your life, and you realize, God is moving in all of these kinds of things. So for me, that was just a really incredible movement in the midst of what could have been a very otherwise even more difficult situation.